Let's start with Hare Krishna Ma mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let's do some Radha Ja. Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha. We are reading Bhagwat Geeta as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We are in chapter 7, text 29. The intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. Let's read the purport. Birth, death, old age, and diseases affect this material body, but not the spiritual body. There is no birth, death, old age, and disease for the spiritual body. So, one who attains a spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages in eternal devotional service. Eternal devotional service is really liberated. Aham Brahmasmi means I am spirit. It is said that one should understand that he is Brahman or spirit soul. This Brahman conception of life is also in devotional service as described in this verse. The pure devotees are transcendentally situated on the Brahman platform and they know everything about transcendental activities. Four kinds of impure devotees who engage themselves in the transcendental service of the Lord achieve their respective goals, and by the grace of the Supreme Lord, when they are fully Krishna conscious, they actually enjoy spiritual association with the Supreme Lord. Yes. So now, even in devotees, there are four kinds of impure devotees. Yeah. But those who are worshippers of demigods never reach the Supreme Lord in his supreme planet. Even the less intelligent Brahman realized persons cannot reach the supreme planet of Krishna known as Goloka Vrindavan. Only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness, Mam Ashritya, are actually entitled to be called Brahman because they are actually endeavoring to reach the Krishna planet. Such persons have no misgivings about Krishna and thus they are factually Brahman. Those who are engaged in worshipping the form or archa of the Lord, archa of the Lord, or who are engaged in meditation on the Lord simply for liberation from material bondage, also know by the grace of the Lord the purports of Brahman, Adhibhuta, etc., as explained by the Lord in the next chapter. Yeah. Let's move to text 30. Those in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. Like Ravan was able to realize the Supreme Lord at the time of death, right? He was he was really happy that he was through dying through Sri Ram, you know. that he was feeling privileged that Sri Ram was killing him. It's so bizarre. So let's read the purport. Persons acting in Krishna consciousness are never deviated from the path of entirely understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the transcendental association of Krishna consciousness, one can understand how the Supreme Lord is the governing principle of the material manifestation and even of the demigods. Gradually, by such transcendental association, one becomes convinced of the Supreme Personality of God. And at the time of death, such a Krishna conscious person can never forget Krishna. Naturally, he is thus promoted to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Goloka Vrindavan. So Ravan reached Goloka Vrindavan. Yes. And Ravan in his previous life was a guard of Goloka Vrindavan. And not just a guard of Goloka, he was a guard of the palace of Lord Krishna himself. Yes. The seventh chapter particularly explains how one can become a fully Krishna conscious person. The beginning of Krishna consciousness is association of persons who are Krishna conscious. Such association is spiritual and puts one directly in touch with the Supreme Lord, and by His grace, one can understand Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the same time, one can really understand the constitutional position of the living entity and how the living entity forgets Krishna and becomes entangled in material activities. By gradual development of Krishna consciousness in good association, the living entity can understand that due to forgetfulness of Krishna, he has become conditioned by the laws of material nature. He can also understand that his human form of life is an opportunity to regain Krishna consciousness and that it should be fully utilized to attain the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Many subjects have been discussed in this chapter. The man in distress, the inquisitive man, the man in want of material necessities, knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of Paramatma, liberation from birth, death, and diseases, and worship of the Supreme Lord. However, he who is actually elevated in Krishna consciousness does not care for the different processes. He simply directly engages himself in activities of Krishna consciousness and thereby factually attains his constitutional position as an eternal servitor of Lord Krishna. In such a situation, he takes pleasure in hearing and glorifying the Supreme Lord in pure devotional service. He is convinced that by his doing so, all his objectives will be fulfilled. This determined faith is called Dradha Vrata, and it is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga or transcendental loving service. That is the verdict of all scriptures. This seventh chapter of the Bhagwat Geeta is the substance of that conviction. And thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports to the seventh chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of knowledge of the Absolute. Yes. Now we move to chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme. Yes. Text 1. Arjun inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are fruitive activities? And what is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Although God has already explained these things in the 7th chapter, because as the part of his own absolute truth, he wants to still understand it in detail. So he's asking this question. Let's read the purport. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjun, beginning with what is Brahman. The Lord also explains karma, that is, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjun also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. So, all together is Atma apparently as per Vedic dictionary. Mind, soul, body, and senses. Yes. Arjun has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottam, that is, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority able to give definitive answers. Yes. We'll always ask questions to a person who is an expert, right? And who is the better expert than Lord himself, right? So he's addressing him as an expert, as a supreme person who knows everything. Yes. So most of the times when people do a lot of research and they have achieved some knowledge which was not available on this planet Earth, are awarded with the title of Sir, you know, or are awarded with some award like some title, right? So that's how the Lord is being addressed as the Supreme Person or the Purushottam. Yes. Let's move to text 2. Who is the Lord of sacrifice and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Yes. Let's read the purport. Lord of sacrifice may refer to either Indra or Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods, including Brahma and Shiv, and Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Now we are understanding that there are two types of demigods. One is primal demigod and one is administrative demigods. Primal demigods are basically the gods which maintain the five elements of material energy, material world, that is earth, water, air, fire, and space. Yeah? Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by yagna performances, that is, sacrificial performances. But here Arjun asks, who is actually the Lord of yagna and how the Lord is residing within the body of the living entity? Arjun addresses the Lord as Madhusudana because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjun because Arjun is a Krishna conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Like since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjun here addresses him as Madhusudana so that Krishna might kill the demonic doubts that arise in Arjun's mind. And with that, this also tells us that we should erase the doubts that we get of ourselves. We should never doubt ourselves. If ourself has an intention or has a thought or has an idea, we must action on those things without a doubt. Yeah. That's what we learn. Now the word Prayan Kale in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjun is very anxious to know of those who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. What should be their position at that final moment? You know, at the time of death, all the bodily functions are disrupted and the mind is not in a proper condition. So, thus disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Yes? Because remembering is also an act of your mind, right? You need that mind so that you remember. Already we suffer a lot of memory loss. We don't even remember what we ate yesterday sometimes. Yes? So it's so difficult to remember the Lord. The disturbed, thus disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Kulashekar, Kulashekara, a great devotee, prays, My Lord, my dear Lord, just now I am quite healthy, and it is better that I die immediately, so that the swan of my mind can seek entrance at the stem of your lotus feet. So he is asking for death when he is feeling healthy, right? So that he remembers him at the time of death. He doesn't want to get into dementia or something, or in a state of unconsciousness but still living, and that in that he doesn't want to die, because in that he is not sure if he will be remembering his God, because lack of control. The metaphor is used before because the swan, a bird of the water, takes pleasure in digging into the lotus flowers. Its sporting its sporting proclivity is to enter the lotus flower. Maharaj Kulashekar says to the Lord, Now my mind is undisturbed and I am quite healthy. If I die immediately thinking of your lotus feet, then I'm sure that my performance of your devotional service will become perfect. But if I have to wait for my natural death, then I do not know what will happen. Because at the time the bodily functions will be disrupted, my throat will be choked up, and I do not know whether I shall be able to chant your name. Better let me die immediately. Yeah. Arjun questions how a person can fix his mind on Krishna's lotus feet at such a time. Yes. Let's move to text 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, The undestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman. So the answer to his first question, what is Brahman? And his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, that is the self. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma or fruitive activity. Yes. So even when you exercise so that you can maintain your body is a fruitive activity. Yes. Let's read the purport. Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman, there is Para-Brahman. Brahman refers to the living entity, and Para-Brahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter. But in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. Yes. So Lord here is to gain more and more matter, to accumulate basically, right? He wants to become the Lord of matter, means he wants to be the king of the material world. Yes, he wants to rule the material world. But in spiritual consciousness, he only wants to serve the Supreme. He just wants to serve the Lord. And whatever Lord says, do this, do that, he will do. And he will bring the change in his material world. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation of the force of material consciousness. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivatma and Brahman, but but he is never called Parabrahman. The living entity, that is Jivatma, takes different positions. Sometimes he merges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with matter, and sometimes he identifies himself with the supreme spiritual nature. Therefore, he is called the Supreme Lord Marginal Energy. According to his identification with material and or spiritual nature, he receives a material or spiritual body. In material nature, he may take a body from any of the 8.4 million species of life. But in spiritual nature, he has only one body. In material nature, he is manifested sometimes as man, demigod, animal, beast, bird, etc., according to his karma. To attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities, he sometimes performs sacrifices, that is yagna. But when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man. So merit does exhaust, okay? So what is the merit? Once he does the sacrifices, he attains that realization. And as soon as the realization is slowly diminishing, he comes back to the earth. Yes, that's how it is, because nothing is constant. Correct? This process is called karma. The Chandogya Upanishad describes the Vedic sacrificial process. On the sacrificial altar, 5 kinds of offerings are made into 5 kinds of fire. Yeah, 5 kinds of fire are conceived of as the heavenly planets, clouds, the earth, man, and woman. Right? These are the 5 kinds of fire. And the 5 kinds of sacrificial offerings are faith, enjoyer on the moon, rain, grains, and semen. Right? In the process of sacrifice, the living entities make specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes on the form of grains, and the grains are eaten by men and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman, and thus the living entity once again attains the human form to perform sacrifice and so repeat the same cycle. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material planet, on the material path. The Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. Oh my God, lovely. ચલ હવે આપણે આવું કઈ લખશું, okay? I will come and just finish this in 5 minutes. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. The Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. तो ये सब sacrifice करता ही नहीं, क्योंकि sacrifice हम इसलिए करते हैं ताकि हमें कुछ मिले. Something we should achieve, we will achieve with the we sacrifice with the faith that we will receive something as a boon. Yeah, even lot of people tapas is basically austerity that people go through so that they achieve a boon, maybe today or tomorrow. So, Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. He takes directly to Krishna consciousness and thereby prepares himself to return to God. Impersonalist commentators on the Bhagwat Geeta unreasonably assume that Brahman takes the form of Jeev in the material world, and to substantiate this, they refer to chapter 15, verse 7 of the Gita. But in this verse, the Lord also speaks of the living entity as an eternal fragment of myself. The fragment of God, the living entity, may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord, Achyuta, never falls down. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Jeev is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entity, is distinguished from Parabrahman, that is Supreme Lord. Let's end here with Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let's do some Radha Jam. Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha.